And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of the Assembly Call, another special edition episode of the Assembly Call, as your Indiana Hoosiers are still marching here in March, still in the NCAA tournament after a glorious opening weekend with wins over Chattanooga, and then, of course, Saturday's epic victory over Kentucky, which we broke down on the Assembly Call IU postgame show. And so we're very excited to bring you another special edition episode, and we hope that we have another special edition episode next week if the Hoosiers can keep on marching. But, of course, there's a couple of big obstacles in the way this weekend before we can start dreaming about that, and it all begins Friday night, barely on Friday night, but the game will be played on Friday night in Philadelphia against the number one seeded North Carolina Tar Heels. And, of course, any of you who are on our email list know exactly how I feel about this game. But I will begin simply by saying that yesterday was the anniversary of Indiana as the number 5 seed knocking off the number 1 seed Duke Blue Devils. And, of course, that is the game that was preceded by the great A.J. Moye reminding everybody that it's not like we were playing the University of Jesus Christ and the 12 Disciples. It's just Duke. It's just a name on a jersey. And all I will say to anybody who may be wondering where they can get their confidence from as Indiana faces this supposed juggernaut in North Carolina, this number 1 seed, get your confidence from that an Indiana team that probably is not as good as this one, certainly fewer pros on that team, a team that didn't win the outright Big Ten championship, so by many metrics not as good as this year's team, is facing a North Carolina team that definitely isn't as good as that Duke team. And that Duke team, number 1 in both offensive and defensive efficiency for the season, ended up getting a 17-point lead on our Hoosiers, only for that gritty, gutty, wonderful group to come back on them and win that epic game 74-73. And so, again, over the next few days, if you need any hope, just remember that game and the fact that Indiana has played North Carolina twice in the tournament, beaten them both times. There's plenty of reasons for confidence. Plus, we're just playing really well. So all those things should make you feel really good. That's my opening statement. But let's go around the horn, and we're going to start with Andy Bottoms, who wasn't here for the Indiana-Kentucky game, so we never actually got to get his Bottoms line on that big victory for the Hoosiers. And so we welcome Andy in now. And Andy, begin, as you always do, with your Bottoms line on IU's victory over Kentucky.
Well, I was definitely disappointed to miss the show after such a great win, but I was at my daughter's soccer game, and when you can pair the intensity of a U8 girls soccer tournament with IU Kentucky, you have a real powder keg of emotions ready to go off. So it was exciting. It was exciting to both games ended up being pretty exciting. I listened to the IU game, wound up doing a lot of pacing, did a fair amount of clapping at times that had nothing to do with the soccer game, and ended up high-fiving some random people that I did not know over the course of both games. So it was, I mean, as you guys said, listening back to the show, I think it kind of epitomized what this team has shown itself to be over the course of the season in terms of the resiliency and battling through all these injuries and all those things. I think they've really, they've really done a good job to do that, and made big plays down the stretch, even with Yogi on the bench around that 8-minute mark, as you guys brought up, and total team effort. Excited to beat Kentucky and move on. Of course, you've got waiting for you. You've got North Carolina, so the road doesn't get any easier. But I'm not sure this team would want it any other way as much as we might. So, it's an exciting game. Excited for Friday. I know I've been looking up a lot of stuff about North Carolina, some of the stats, and watching some things like that. And it's just been an exciting week already. So Friday can't get here fast enough for me. But you guys did a great job breaking down the Kentucky game. Always nice as somebody who lives close to where a lot of Kentucky fans are here in Cincinnati to have bragging rights for a little while. And since the teams don't seem intent on playing each other outside of the NCAA tournament, I may have those bragging rights for a while.
Yeah, no, great point, Andy. And obviously some of you may be wondering if we're going to be joined by Mark Titus. Obviously we promoted his appearance on the show, and we're working on it. Actually, the reason why we started a little bit late is we were having some issues with Mark getting into the Google Hangout. We still are. None of us are quite sure why. Google Hangouts have been giving us some issues this season, so if we end up going with some new provider for our live video recording next year, we'll know why, because there have been a few hiccups. So we're hoping that we can get Mark. I think he's trying to reboot right now, because if he's here, obviously he can offer a great perspective, and so we're going to do everything we can to bring him here. But let's continue to go around the horn. Just get some opening thoughts. Ryan, how are you feeling? What's your confidence level heading into Friday night as the Hoosiers go into North Carolina and underdog yet again?
I'm really confident with this group. I mean, at the very least, I know they will play hard and they will play North Carolina tough. And really, I mean, I'm not gambling on the game. I want them to win, but I'm not going to go out and say like, oh, they're definitely going to win or they're definitely going to lose. I think they're going to play hard and they're going to hang with North Carolina and they're going to make it come down to that, like they did against Kentucky. Going to make it come down to that last 8 minutes and hopefully with mental toughness, as they've been preaching for the last couple of weeks, mental toughness, stay mentally tough, stay focused on the task at hand, they'll be able to pull it out. But they're facing, I mean, let's not have any illusions about it. They're facing a very good team, and they're facing a team with a lot of length, some really good veteran leaders in Marcus Page and Bryce Johnson, guys who have been there, been through the wars in the ACC, and have been very successful during their careers. And again, I got to say it again, the length. They are a very long, athletic team that is tough to beat. But in some ways, North Carolina is a good fit for Indiana. They like to play fast. They like to get out and transition, and they're going to speed the game up. Hopefully, it's for Indiana, it's sped up but under control. North Carolina does not force a lot of turnovers, which is good news for Indiana. But I think to win the game, Indiana's got to make shots, and I know that people hate hearing that. They hate hearing, oh, well, just make threes and you'll win. Well, I know it sounds simple, but it's not. They really do need to make shots, and they didn't shoot very well against Kentucky, found a way to win. They need to be hitting those outside shots against North Carolina because North Carolina's going to score a lot of points, and Indiana's got to slow them down, and Indiana's got to be able to counterpunch, and some three-point shooting will help that.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that matchup a lot more as we go through tonight. I know Andy was sending us some emails earlier today of just kind of a data dive that he did, so he's got some interesting numbers on that, which we will get to. Obviously one of the big storylines entering this game, as it was entering last weekend, is what is the health of Indiana's injured players. Robert Johnson re-injured his ankle. Juwan Morgan, again, injured his shoulder. Colin Hartman, looks to be okay. Whether or not he'll be able to shoot better, we won't know. But, Will, you were our man on the street on campus earlier today. I believe you actually ran into Robert Johnson. What can you report from that brief but certainly memorable encounter?
I appreciate you handing that off to me. That's something that Ryan can't take from me on the show today, so I appreciate that. But so, yeah, I ran into Robert Johnson, and I mean, it was super brief, but pretty much I just told him, hey, everybody here at the Assembly Call is rooting for you, hoping that you can get healthy by Friday, and I definitely made sure to pass along that his fan club president, Mr. Andy Bottoms over there, was wishing him a little bit more of the best than the rest of us because Andy just has that little special something for Rojo that we don't have. But another opening thought real quick, obviously real excited for this game coming up. There's going to be a couple matchups that IU can exploit, and I'm sure we're going to talk about them in great depth as we go along, but I'm just excited for Friday, guys.
And Andy, you wanted to jump in here with a thought or two about the injuries.
Yeah, I saw a couple tweets about there's some media availability today, and it sounds like Crean's word on Johnson was that he was iffy. So take from that what you will. Expected Juwan Morgan to play, but apparently Morgan needed to get stitches based on something that happened in practice either yesterday or today in his head somewhere. So obviously that guy is just a magnet for injury at this point, but it wasn't anything further to the shoulder. And then like I said, Robert Johnson's iffy. I don't know what that means. I'm sure he'll attempt to play, but that one I think clearly of the two feels like the longer shot to me.
And there is a conversation going on in the chat. Our buddy Jeff is asking if Will is wearing a Bears hat. Yes, I can confirm that he is. As Brian said, he forgot to change his clothes after his Bears Bros show yesterday. So thank you, Will. So real quick, for any of you who are in Philadelphia, obviously tickets are still available, and so we do want to let you know that our sponsor, SeatGeek, has some great prices, and I'm looking right now at the page for the East Regional Session 1, and there's actually, as of yesterday, there were only good deals, but there's actually one great deal. There's a pair of tickets for $277 each in Section 108 that look like really good seats. I believe you can get tickets for less than that, and I'm scrolling down, and you can find tickets for less than that. They're not quite as good as seats, so they're not quite as good of a deal, but that's a nice thing about SeatGeek is you get that deal score, so you can kind of make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck. Plus, you can put in your email address, and they'll let you know when prices drop. So whether you want tickets for the East Regional, if you want to look ahead for the Final Four, or if you just want to look for a concert or something else that's coming up in the next few weeks, SeatGeek is a great place to go. We're really excited that they're sponsors of the show because we use them ourselves. We bought Will's tickets when we went up to the IU Minnesota game using SeatGeek, and so that's why we're happy to recommend them to you. And we do recommend that you use the promo code ASSEMBLY, ASSEMBLY, when you sign up, and you can do that either by going to SeatGeek.com and clicking on the button up in the nav bar. I believe it says, "How did you hear about us?" Use that promo code ASSEMBLY, or use the SeatGeek app. It's free. You can download it to your Android device or to your iOS device. And again, the promo code ASSEMBLY, that will get you a $20 rebate on your first purchase at SeatGeek.com. Alrighty, well, we are still waiting on our buddy Mark Titus to reboot his computer and try and get in here. Hopefully he will. But in the meantime, we will forge ahead. And unless, does anybody else have any lingering thoughts on IU Kentucky that we want to get to before we move on?
My word, that felt good.
Yeah, it did.
That's all. It's just that's a really good team, and Indiana played very well, and it was great to see them win. That's all I got, and I'm still basking in it.
Hey, is it? I talked with Pat Forty for Podcast on the Brink earlier this week. Is it even arguable that that's Tom Crean's biggest win? Hey, look who it is! We got him. Mark Titus is here.
Oh my God! Bigger upset. Middle Tennessee State over Michigan State, or me figuring out how to use Google Hangouts. I don't know.
That's a close.
I don't know what's the bigger upset.
That's a very.
I gotta say, Mark. I gotta say, let's get this out of the way here. Mark's beard is in NCAA tournament form, man. That thing is beautiful.
It's looking good, huh?
It is.
This is my Grantland beard. I usually shave like once every couple weeks or something. I shaved the day that I found out that Grantland was going under. So then I had a clean shave, and I thought, I got nothing else to do. I'm gonna grow a beard. And then here we are, all these months later. I have no end game in playing. I don't know what's like. At some point, I got to get rid of it all, but I don't know when that point's going to be.
So Mark,
anyway.
to kick things off here, you joined us earlier this season. You were a guest host after the IU Ohio State game, and that was a game where Indiana, it was their fourth straight Big Ten win, and you could kind of see their transition from awful against Duke to becoming this team that might be able to compete for the Big Ten in that game. How surprised are you, based on what you've seen since, that Indiana is where it is, or on that day did you kind of see this coming?
I think I saw it come. I mean, I kind of envisioned what the team is now at the start of the year. I thought they had the parts, they had the experience, they had pretty much everything, and for me it was less like, oh, I can't believe they figured it out after they kind of went through that downturn with Duke and Maui and all that, and it was more like, of course they figured it out. Like, look how good this team is. Look at all the pieces they have. So yeah, it definitely started. I think maybe it started a little bit before the Ohio State thing, but that was, as an Ohio State alum watching that game on the other side, because usually I watch like as an IU fan, but then cheering kind of against IU, watching that game was like, oh my God, these guys are unreal. And then as the Big Ten season progressed, there's a little bit of doubt with the scheduling. I know that IU fans are sick of talking about the scheduling and all that kind of stuff, but for me, it was partially like I wanted to see what they could do away from Assembly Hall, because it's so easy to win at Assembly Hall in that environment. It's so hard for teams to come in and beat IU there. So I was curious to see like their big moment away from Assembly Hall, and I never really got that necessarily to where I was like, okay, now I fully believe in this team. But it definitely happened against Kentucky. I'll say that much. Now I'm all in. I'm excited for Friday night, and I'm back. So
what were your thoughts on that IU Kentucky game? I mean, obviously Kentucky was favored, and Indiana turned in certainly their best defensive performance of the season. How surprised were you to see a team that has really struggled in big games in the tournament, especially under Tom Crean, play that well?
Yeah, I thought for me, and I don't mean this critically, I mean this like as a good thing, I actually didn't feel like IU played that well. Certainly they did defensively. I mean, Kentucky is very good offensively, especially their guards, obviously. But I feel like IU could have played a lot better, and I don't mean that in like, oh, they're not playing well right now when they should be. I mean like they just beat a team that everyone's picking that was kind of a dark horse to win the whole thing. They beat them, and I didn't feel like they played that well. I mean, Yogi was kind of bottled up the whole first half. It took him a little bit of while which is understandable having Tyler Ulis guarding him. I felt like Troy was forcing a lot of stuff. Even Thomas Bryant had like a few moments where it was like, okay, I'm gonna just go between my legs for no reason, kind of pull up jump shot here. He had like 3 or 5 moments that you kind of wish that wouldn't happen. So there's a lot of stuff that they could fix, and they still won, which I think was super encouraging. And obviously defensively, that's been the issue. Not really the issue, but that's been the thing all year. Is like we know IU can score. Can they consistently get stops? Can they go up against the high-powered offense and consistently stop them? And for them to do that against Kentucky, it was pretty encouraging.
Andy, go ahead and hop in.
Yeah, Mark, we were talking about this a little bit before we got started. Just kind of curious to get your perspective before we start talking North Carolina, but just from guys been in the NCAA tournament, and just kind of the process of like getting through that first weekend, and obviously might not have an insight into how Crean handles this versus how Thad would, but how did he kind of approach these?
Yeah.
You get to the second weekend. What's the mindset from the coaching standpoint and how they approach it with the players?
Right. I mean, it is as cliche as it is one game at a time. I guarantee IU assistants are definitely putting together film on Wisconsin and Xavier because you don't want to win and then sit there and go, okay, now what? But 80 to 90% of their focus is on North Carolina, obviously, and it is one game at a time. And I think as far as the players, I think kind of, I mean, certainly like some of the guys on the team did have experience in the tournament, but the tournament is so different from what you're used to throughout the season. It is a huge distraction, and you'll hear a lot of people say this, and it sounds like cliched nonsense, but when you're there and you kind of have to do the open practice thing, and you're at the game, and like there are a bunch of different kind of crowds there. It's not like a home game where it's like a game where everyone's cheering against us. There's like 4 or 5 different fan bases there. Then they're just random people that are just there cheering for nobody. They just want to be there. Kind of getting used to that environment, getting used to the flow of tournament, getting used to the different officiating even. It takes a while. So I think to have like those 2 games under your belt, now you kind of gotten the tournament thing out of the way. You know what to expect. Now you're just playing basketball, and it is just a one game at a time. Like, let's just go play North Carolina, beat them, and then now you got 2 days to figure out what's next. But right now they're probably mostly just North Carolina. So.
All right, so let's start looking ahead to North Carolina. I mean, obviously, North Carolina is a team people kind of talked about early in the season not being that tough. We know they're talented. They seem to turn that around, and now they're as hot as anybody. How do you see this game going? How do you assess Indiana's chances against the Tar Heels?
It's weird because North Carolina is completely different from Kentucky. I mean, North Carolina's strengths obviously they're big guys, whereas Kentucky had the guards. But like Kentucky's bigs could potentially be pretty good. I think North Carolina's guards are coming around and they're playing well. The big thing for me that I noticed in the Kentucky game for IU that I think could be a problem would be so Kentucky I noticed was trying to get the ball out of Yogi's hands, especially in that first half. They would face guard him, and there were a lot of times that Troy would bring the ball up. And we all kind of know what that leads to when Troy Williams gets the open court ahead of him and tries to maybe do too much. I'm slightly worried that Carolina will do a similar thing and IU will fall into the trap of trying to run with them, which IU obviously can run. They can score. They can get up and down. But that's what Carolina is wanting. Carolina, if there's a big criticism of Roy Williams, it's that he's stubborn to a fault. He just like, this is my system. I don't care what you try to do. You watch him play Virginia, and Virginia's slowing him down and hoping that they take quick shots. And Roy's like, yeah, of course we're going to take quick shots. This is what we do. This is what we'll always do. So part of me is a little worried that IU is going to get caught up in the trap, especially the guys who are vulnerable to these traps, like Troy and how Bryant can sometimes try to do a little bit too much. I'm a little worried about that, but if they can control that, if Yogi can be an all-around point guard, get the ball in his hands, initiate the offense, look for his shot on through the offense instead of just in transition, that sort of stuff. I mean, listen, if IU in 2002 with Jared Jeffries and 4 white dudes can go 2 for 10 from the three-point line and beat one of the best teams in the last 20 years in Duke, this team could certainly beat North Carolina. They don't have to play perfect. They just have to play well. So.
Yeah, that's the exact point we kicked off the show with, which is so important to remember. And that team got up by 17 points. It was insane.
17 points. I'm obsessed with that game. That game, part of it was I was there. Like that was my first NCAA tournament game of my life was in Rupp Arena to watch that, and I will.
Man.
That's my favorite game of all time. And every so often when I'm feeling down, I'll just open the box score and look at that and look how Duke had 6 NBA players, and they were coached by Mike Krzyzewski, and IU had. I mean, let's be honest, they had Jared Jeffries, and then not much else. And they beat Duke. So yeah, if that can happen, be down 17 and come back against Duke, yeah. So, but this isn't what I'm trying to say. Is this isn't that game. This isn't okay. Every bounce has to go IU's way. This is honestly, you can make a case that IU has a better team. Like North Carolina is playing well right now, but I felt like coming into the year, if you would have said IU is going to be better than North Carolina, I would have said yeah, that makes sense. I mean, to me, North Carolina is kind of redundant. They have a lot of big guys here, either tall and skinny or tall and fat, and then they have 3 6-foot guards that can't shoot, and that's their team. And IU has more of pieces of actual basketball players. So if IU gives a B plus, a B, they could still win this game. So I'm really excited about it. I'm definitely pumped up. I've been waiting for that game this year that just grabs me and shakes me. It's IU could go to the Final Four, and that happened against Kentucky. So here I am now.
Yeah. So Andy, I know you dug into the numbers a little bit. What did that reveal about maybe what Indiana needs to do? What some advantages are, some vulnerabilities coming into this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to look at. I think one of the things, just to piggyback off what Mark said, is North Carolina does look like to get out and run, and they really want to get their big guys to the box early. So Bryce Johnson is a perfect example of that. I mean, he's got a really quick turnaround hook shot. He's just going to run straight to the box and try to get position early. And that's one thing that IU has struggled with at times, is really giving up deep post position, at which point defensively there's just not a lot for them to respond to and to be able to do. So that obviously is important. I mean, a couple of the things that I looked at, the turnovers are really big. I tried to look through stats from their ACC games plus the NCAA tournament, so I didn't look through every single game they played, but turnovers is one, so they're 3-3 when they have a turnover percentage over 19%. So in a lot of the games that they haven't played well, they've just kind of gotten careless with the ball. On the flip side of that, they're 1-3 in the games that they've had their 4 lowest defensive turnover rates. So obviously a reliance on not turning the ball over is somewhat frightening to IU fans at this point, even though things have certainly improved on that side. So I think that's really important. And really, when you look at overall numbers, they've allowed more than 1.07 points per possession twice to Notre Dame and Virginia, who were both way over that, close to 1.2. And they're 0-3 during the stretch when they've allowed at least 1.07 points per possession. So given IU's offense, it feels like that's attainable. The problem is that North Carolina plays fast and scores really well on their own. So there aren't a lot of games when they're not scoring very well. So limiting the 2-point shooting and limiting the inside game, trying to force Bryce Johnson out of the lane where he shoots closer to 70%, outside where he's, maybe 40%, from outside the lane, I think was a stat that flashed up during one of the games I was watching back. So, I think that the rebounding battle is one that everybody's gonna call upon for sure, and an area that IU needs to do well, keep them off the glass. But it's kind of been a weird, strength on strength there, where they both have really high offensive rebounding rates and aren't as good on defense. So. I think those rebounding turnovers is probably going to go a long way toward deciding the outcome. But I think IU has the kind of offense that has given North Carolina problems before, but they have looked a bit more locked in defensively over the last couple weeks than they did earlier in the season. But they've certainly improved there in a similar way that IU has, but there's still stretches where they can be scored upon for sure.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, you want to pop in?
Yeah, I wanted to say, ask Mark, for our fans who haven't seen North Carolina a whole lot this year, is their length really the big thing for Indiana to be concerned about? I mean, look, with the way things are going, Thomas Bryant's going to get 2 fouls in the first 3 minutes.
Right.
Count on that. So, do you think that their length is going to be Indiana's biggest concern coming into this? We've heard a lot of people say that. I wonder what your thoughts are.
I do. I definitely would agree with that. I think Bryce Johnson's going to be obviously the tough matchup. Thomas Bryant probably is going to get in foul trouble, so I think we're going to have to count on OG to play a lot. I think he's the guy. He's going to have to be the guy if Bryant gets in foul trouble to guard Johnson. But yeah, beyond just the sheer wingspan and just size of North Carolina, I am a little worried about the pace, just because. Like I said, IU can play fast, but there's a difference between playing at the speed, playing fast because you want to play fast, and playing fast because the other team is trying to get. So I'm worried that IU's going to fall into a trap of shooting quick shots because Carolina's like baiting them into it versus, yeah, this is the shot we wanted. This is what we're trying to do. We're running our stuff just because our stuff looks a little bit like your stuff. You know, like that's just a coincidence. Not Carolina saying, hey, go faster, throw up garbage shots so we can get out and run and dunk on you. And that worries me a little bit. But yeah, as far as like their personnel, it's definitely their length. And beyond just how big their guys are, they're great passers. I think the big question that Crane and his staff are going to have to come up with is what to do with Johnson when he's posted up. Because if you just catch glimpses of him and highlights, he seems to just be a pick and roll dunker or an offensive rebound dunker. But he's got great post moves, and so does Kennedy Meeks and Isaiah Hicks and a lot of those guys. So the question is going to be, how do you double? The last two teams that have played him, Virginia always doubles big to big on the entry pass. They bring their other big over. Carolina's great at that. They're great at passing out of that double team. Providence was doing that a lot in their last game that Carolina played, and they were doing great passing out of the double team. So, I mean, obviously Crane's not wanting my help, but I feel like Carolina's been seeing a lot of big to big double, and I feel like the doubles are going to have to come from the guards, especially given that Carolina's not that great of a shooting team. They've gotten better, their guards, but now you slow those guys down, especially if Brian gets in foul trouble. Like I think we all can agree is probably a safe bet. That's going to be the big question mark, or whether you want to throw zone at him, which I know Indiana's gotten really good at man away from the zone quite as much as what at the earlier part of the year, but they definitely have the zone in the repertoire. So maybe this is a game where you bust out the 2-3 and try to slow them down that way.
Well, and when Indiana played Purdue, who obviously has some good post guys, we doubled with the guards. Robert Johnson was doing a lot of the doubling. So, I mean, do you think that's how we've played it in the past? You think that's probably how we'll do it again? And in that case, how big of a loss is Robert Johnson?
By the way, I haven't heard. I've been trying to keep tabs on that. Is he playing or no?
I don't know. The latest is that he's iffy. He would. That is against Purdue, especially doubling.
Well, listen. I mean, I think the one big advantage that IU has over North Carolina is guard play. I know Marcus Page was one of the top 2 or 3 point guards coming into the year in the preseason, all that. If you talk to Carolina fans, like Page has been really frustrating for them this year, and he's been playing better lately. Whether he knows that this is like kind of his last go and this is it for him, but he's playing a little bit better. But still, you look on paper at the Indiana guards versus the North Carolina guards, and the advantage is definitely to Indiana. So if Johnson can't go, that is going to be definitely a big blow because that's one area where you kind of flex their muscle on North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one other thing to jump in on about the passing, I mean, I think that's a great point because they run a lot of high-low actions with those guys because they are good passers and to really try to spread people out to avoid letting people double, at least with the other big guy down there. So I think that'll be interesting. And I guess, Mark, kind of along those lines, in watching Carolina versus what Kentucky did, anything really stand out to you different in terms of how they approach things offensively? I mean, to me, Kentucky was running a lot more like pick and roll actions versus North Carolina, a little bit of that, but definitely not nearly as much.
Well, I will say the one thing about Carolina that makes that people enjoy I'm trying to form my thought here. The one thing about Carolina that I always open shots as soon as they get them, and IU certainly falls into this. I wouldn't call it a trap. It's just that's sort of the way they play too. Carolina, it doesn't matter if there's 28 seconds on the shot clock or 1 second on the shot clock. If a guy's open and he's capable of knocking the shot down, the guy's going to shoot it, and that's trouble sometimes. Or you'll be watching on a random January night and they're losing by 24 at Florida State, and you're like, what the heck is going on? How is this happening? And the answer is guys are just wide open, so they're taking shots. They're not thinking about like the idea of working the ball for a better shot, which is like an old school Big Ten line of thinking that a lot of teams like a Wisconsin, for example, stereotypically would employ. Carolina is not that team. Carolina is I'm open, I'm shooting it, and let's see what happens there. So it's the flip side to what I'm worried about is IU sort of falling into North Carolina's trap. If IU can sort of back off the guards and be like, go ahead and shoot it, and keep it out and go ourselves. I think that could be a big plus. But this is definitely going to have a feel to me of an old school like 1980s game. If you go back and watch like the 80s, where guys like analytics weren't quite a thing yet, so guys didn't really like break down points per possession and how to work the clock for a better shot and stuff like that. It was just like, yeah, I'm open, I'm going to shoot. Okay, you're 0-4 sort of thing. I feel like this is what this game is going to be. Is just guys making plays, and it'll be a lot of fun to watch. But North Carolina outside like transition. I mean, if we're talking X's and O's, like transition is their offense. Beyond that, it is really complicated. Anything too crazy. I mean, it's just like their bread and butter is beat you down the floor, score before you get your defense set, and that's what they have success doing because they have the athletes and they have the talent to do it. So Indiana's going to have to get back on D and form some walls and make it work for a shot.
All right, so we've probably talked maybe too much for some folks about how about reasons IU maybe should be worried on defense. What are some advantages that you think IU has in areas of North Carolina's defense that they'll be able to take advantage of in the game?
We may be having some are you back, Mark? Your screen went off for a second. That we might.
Am I back? Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, like offensively, the way they're going to have success against North Carolina is just penetrating and kicking. Pretty much what they did against Kentucky. I mean, they didn't really seem to me to IU didn't really run anything particularly complicated. It was mostly just set the ball handle, the ball screen, get to the paint, kick it out to the next guy, drive, kick it out to the next guy, make a play. It's going to be that kind of game, I think. North Carolina's length is somewhat of an issue. You're going to have to set some screens, move guys around a little bit, but it starts with Yogi with me. That first half of the Kentucky game, the way IU and I've watched this game twice. I watched it in a bar as a fan, just screaming at the TV and drinking beer when IU's losing, and then hanging on, hoping they win. And then I watched it back to kind of like analyze it a little more. And in that first half, when I was like, oh, this isn't happening, IU's losing, this is over. It was because Yogi wasn't really involved. Yogi would bring the ball up. I actually made a list of his shots. Let me consult my notes. I was prepared for this because I went back and I was really interested in how he played in the first half. So his first shot was his patented just dribble up the court off of the outlet pass, pull up on a dime three that he has shot 7,000 of in his career at IU that he missed. His second shot was a zero pass ball screen 5 seconds into the shot clock. We're talking about Yogi here. His third shot, he got Derek Willis. So Ulis was guarding him. He gets Derek Willis of Kentucky, big guy on him, and he broke him down off the dribble and got a layup. That was a good play. His fourth shot was a desperation three at the shot clock buzzer. Fifth shot was a contested ball screen three off of zero passes. His sixth shot was a zero pass transition layup, and his seventh shot was a zero pass blow by layup. So all these, like pretty much every one of his shots were zero passes, ball screen, just quick shots. And then in the second half, you notice he comes out and Troy's running the point a little bit. Yogi's coming off of baseline screens. He was posting up a couple times and stuff. So I think stuff like that where Yogi's getting involved in the offense beyond like, okay, it's my turn, I'm going to come off this ball screen and throw up a three, or I'm going to shoot it in transition. Kind of the let's get Yogi involved. Let's have someone else bring the ball up. Let's have maybe Robert Johnson handle it, have Yogi come off a stagger screen. Just ways to get him involved beyond the, hey, you take the ball, go do something, and bail us out. I think that's going to be a big that if I were coaching, which I'm obviously not, I'm just sitting in my office and with growing out a beard. But if I were coaching, that would be a point of emphasis. Find ways to get Yogi involved that aren't just him trying to make something out of nothing off the dribble. So.
And Ryan, you mentioned that on the postgame show. Just the difference in Yogi's shot selection from the first half to the second half, and really the shot availability that he was getting.
Yeah, I really think that there was also a push to get the ball through the paint, whoever was handling it. And I think that opened things up for everybody, and Yogi is going to be the beneficiary of that, as was Thomas Bryant.
We're having some audio difficulties with Ryan. I'm going to mute you real quick, Ryan. There were some audio difficulties there. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, and so here's my other question for you, Mark: is how do you think Thomas Bryant will do against North Carolina's bigs? I mean, we've talked about them, from an offensive standpoint. How much? Because we've seen. I mean, Thomas is just so adept at getting the ball up on the rim, scoring down low, and that second half against Kentucky was as good as we've seen him play. How can he do, assuming he can stay out of foul trouble and stay on the court against North Carolina's bigs?
It's funny because I remember the last time I came on here, we started talking about Thomas Bryant, and I think I made the comment of like, he's the perfect recruit because he's going to stay for 2 or 3 years, and this is great that he's like good enough to make an impact, but he's not good enough to go pro. And now here we are, and it's like, yeah, he's gone. He's definitely gone. He's playing out of his mind right now. So for me, like he can't get caught in trying to use this as a platform to make a case for the NBA or whatever, which I mean, I'm not gonna criticize the guy because he's been so much better than I expected him to be, and his improvement from, I mean, I just think back to Maui when he was getting in fights in the huddle, and to where he is now, it's like mind blowing. So he's made huge strides. He still has like 3 or 4 moments every game where it's like, hey, I'm kind of feeling myself. Let me just hit a step back 3 here, and you're like, no, don't do that. Just go to the block and kill this dude. So I hope he doesn't try to do that. I hope he doesn't see like Bryce Johnson and ACC or All-American, whatever Bryce Johnson was this year. He was he was probably the best big man in college basketball, for being honest. So hopefully his eyes aren't lighting up saying, okay, this is my time to shine. I'm going to do this. If he just plays within himself, man, he's just as good as Bryce. Just do what he's been doing. He doesn't need to do anything too crazy. Just he gets the ball in the block and he's got one-on-one, make a move and score, and if not, then kick it back out to the three-point shooters, let them score. So just don't overcomplicate it and just do what you've been doing, and I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I mentioned this after the Chattanooga game, and the same thing held true in the Kentucky game. He got those early fouls, but it's funny to listen and talk and think back to some of those Maui games where he was fighting with guys and just so emotional that he really has taken that, at least the kind of emotion toward the referees, I guess, out of his game these last couple in the first couple tournament games. So I think that's important. The other thing I wonder if we'll see is him being isolated outside a little bit. Kennedy Meeks and Joel James, when they're in the game, are not really as fleet of foot and maybe able to stay in front of him. So I think in general spacing is going to be big, but it'll be interesting to see. I forget which games that's been, but Crean's come out and kind of isolated him on the outside and let him work on the perimeter a little bit. So I'll be curious to see if he gives that a shot, at least when one of those 2 guys is guarding him.
Brian, let's try you again.
Am I back? Is this working?
You're better for now.
Google Hangouts, man. What's going on?
I know.
Somebody send us a new platform. We'll advertise for you. But
we don't want to pay for anything, though. That's the important part. We don't have to pay.
It's going to be free. It's got to be free.
Ultimately, is what's gotten us in this situation now. But that's neither here nor there.
They've got to pay my insane salary. It's so. No, but what I was trying to say is I think that Yogi in the second half, it was he and the rest of the team were much more determined to play through the paint, and I think that they're going to have to do that against North Carolina too. I mean that's when Indiana's offense really takes off and gets going is when there's a flow to it that goes through the paint and works outward from there, as opposed to just trying to dump it in. And everybody stays where they are. If you saw late in that game against Kentucky, every time someone drove into the lane or drove inside the 3-point line, people were cutting and diving to the hoop. And you saw Indiana get a few buckets off that, especially one where Yogi really drove into nowhere, and Thomas Bryant dove from the top of the key, got a one-handed jam. It was a really good setup, and actually it's funny because Thomas got the dunk there, but Troy was almost cut him off and ran into the ball because he was diving too, and they were trying to make stuff happen, lots of movement, and that's where this offense needs to be.
Another big question mark. Let's say hypothetically that OG Anunoby, blocks a couple of Bryce Johnson shots, gets another patented steal and dunk before halftime. Does he just go pro at halftime?
I think so. I think he does. I think he has to. It's OG has been so. I have to kind of say this because I've been a vocal Tom Crean critic. This is no secret to anybody that follows me through the years. That the one thing that Tom Crean does that is just absolutely amazing is he empowers his players to just. OG is just another in a long line of guys who I'd never heard of, no one had heard of. It has now turned into, honestly, probably one of IU's best players. Maybe like I feel like he should be starting almost this game. And that's amazing, and that's what's been so fun to watch is how these guys just they play loose. They know what they can do. They have confidence in what they're doing. And if you watch enough college basketball, as I do, I'm obviously watching like teams all over the country. There's so many teams full of guys that are just scared. They're role guys, and they're like, what is my role? I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. And to Crean's credit, he's always been, even going back to the Marquette days, he's like, every single guy on his team, he's like, you're a great player. You know what you can do. Go out there and do it. And basically, like OG, if he went anywhere else in the country, I don't think he's doing what he's doing now. I think this is like unique to his situation at IU, and it's been so fun to watch him that I honestly didn't know who he was. I couldn't pronounce his name in December, and now he's like my favorite player, and I'm begging that he sticks around for 4 years and went on the AJ Boye tour for me. That I really feel like if he stays 2 or 3 years, maybe it'll probably only take like 3 years. If he stays 3 years, he's gonna be my favorite of all time. I have that feeling, which are strong words, I know, but I'm sorry, AJ. That's how I feel about OG right now.
I was just going to say, I don't think you're alone in that, Mark. I think a lot of people are starting to notice OG and become really big fans of it.
Yeah.
I will say too, OG had, for me, the play of the game against Kentucky was when Troy, so I think there's like 6 minutes, no, there's like 7 minutes left. IU's up 3. Kentucky misses a 3. And someone gets the rebound on IU. Kentucky has a 3. Someone going down, and you're like, oh god, here comes another, spin move, falling to the ground, throwing it from his hip, air ball or something. It comes a wild play. The last second, he makes the right play, kicks it out to OG, who hits a 3 to put IU up 6 with like 6 minutes left. And that deflated Kentucky. I think they called a timeout like immediately after that, and that was like for me the play of the game. And at that moment, I was like, IU's gonna win this. Like they hit that shot to go up 6. That was the first time where they had like a nice, comfortable sort of lead that I felt, okay, if they just play this safe, kind of trade buckets the rest of the way, which is pretty much what they did, they got this. And for OG to step up and hit that was pretty awesome, and that was a cool moment. So, yeah.
Hey, you mentioned him starting, and we've talked about that. I mean, we've talked about on the show that basically all IU lineups need to start with Yogi and OG, and then you just build around them. But, in terms of starting, because we said, you got a good thing going, he's comfortable off the bench, leave him there. Do you buy into that, or is it, the guy's earned it? Clearly he's one of Indiana's 5 best players. Yeah. Do you start him, or do you say he's a freshman, let him continue coming off the bench? Like, what does that matter?
Yeah, I think it depends on what his mindset is. I mean, I obviously don't know the guy personally. I don't know what his motivations are and what kind of. I think that's a player by player thing. I think he seems to be fine coming off the bench, and they'll probably stick with that because that seems to be what works for him. Some guys, might take it as a slight. Like, I've been playing so well, and you're still not starting me. What the heck's going on here? What more do I have to do? He doesn't strike me as that kind of guy, so I think he's fine in that regard. But I would start him in terms of the matchups. Like, I feel like Bryant starting out on Johnson, but just given his foul trouble, given the fact that Bryce Johnson is an emotional player himself, like I feel like Bryce Johnson can use his emotional kind of nature and kind of poke at Bryant almost to kind of stoke that emotional flame, and that sort of worries me that I would start OG, put him on Johnson, and let Bryant guard Kennedy Meeks and do it that way. But as far as like the psyche of OG, like I feel like he's perfect coming off the bench. I don't think he doesn't strike me as a guy who has the ego, and sometimes a lot of coaches, you bring a guy off the bench who can play against like a second unit and just outmatch them is an awesome luxury to have. Certainly, like you think back to Syracuse. The Dion Waiters thing, which was so head-scratching that a dude went 3rd or 4th in the draft and wasn't even – he was the 6th-man team, and he was like the 3rd or 4th pick. I forget what it was. That was pretty wild. But, yeah, it could be that sort of thing where it's just like the energy guy off the bench who he might be one of the best players, but do it this way because that's what's working.
All right, Mark. First of all, love the shirt, 76 champs. there's no way I can go without bringing that shirt up tonight. So we've talked about a lot of players, but my question to you is, who do you think would be like the X factor for Indiana? I mean, there's a few guys that we haven't talked about, but for me, I think it might be Nick Zeisloft. He was only 1 for 5 from from beyond the arc. The whole team kind of struggled as a whole, but UNC, they kind of allow teams to kind of get hot from deep. So I'm wondering who your X factor is.
Having some audio issues with Will. Go ahead, Mark.
Oh yeah. I would agree with Zeisloft. I mean, for honestly, like if you would bring up Zeisloft, I would say OG. Just because I feel like Bryant. If we're assuming that Bryant is going to have some trouble staying out of foul trouble, Indiana is going to really need someone to guard Bryce Johnson and just slow him down and just. And OG seems to be the one guy who has the length and the foot speed and all that kind of stuff to do that. So. OG is kind of the de facto X factor going into every game, but more to your point with Zeisloft, that's definitely one thing that, as I said earlier, like Indiana has the advantage with the guard play. If they can hit threes, if they can space the floor with what they're shooting, hitting every time he's shooting, just the fact that he's out there and creating driving lanes for some other guys and spacing the floor is a huge plus. So. Yeah, that would definitely be huge. If Zeisloft comes out and hits his first couple, the game has a completely different feel to me than if he, isn't a threat at all or if he's 0 for his first 3 or something. So if Zeisloft's hitting shots, IU is a much better team, and hopefully he is. And hopefully Robert Johnson plays and hits shots too because, yeah, the guard play is going to be the big thing for IU, and hopefully it works out that way.
Yeah, and it's easy to forget with how that Kentucky game ended that in the first half when Indiana was really struggling, Robert Johnson's the only guy who could make a shot, and he came in and made those 2 threes, which were really big to kind of keep Indiana afloat early on. All right, so let's, Mark, one other question I wanted to ask you is just about Tom Crean, because as you said, you haven't always been the biggest supporter. You are sporting cartoon Tom Crean as your Twitter avatar right now, which is great. But, I feel personally, of all, Tom Crean's been here, 8 years now. I've never felt more visceral trust in him than I do right now, just in terms of game plan, handle on the team, what he's going to do. Do you get that same sense? And if so, what's been the biggest difference, the biggest change that has brought that on?
Absolutely. I 100% agree, man. It's been kind of funny, and I don't blame people for doing this. But it's been funny that the IU is winning and in the position they are, and everyone tweeted at me like, "I bet you hate this. I bet you hate that IU is winning, so you can't make fun of Tom Crean." It's like, no, I don't. This is what I've always wanted. I wanted, to go into games and say, yes, I believe in this team. I think that this team has the pieces, and I trust the coaching staff to get that done. And honestly, it's funny you say that because I had that thought too going into this Sweet 16 versus the other two. I feel like in 2012 it was like, okay, now they got to play Kentucky. It's over. Like they beat Kentucky on a last-second shot at home. There's no way they're beating them again on a neutral court. Like this isn't happening. It was a fun ride. Now it's over. And then in 2013, it was almost like you were nervous because IU is clearly the best team in the country that year, and it's like you don't want to be excited because this is where they're supposed to be, and it's just like a weird feeling of don't screw this up. And then obviously they did screw it up, but I almost couldn't really enjoy that. I was like nervous going into that game. And now to like kind of be the underdog and to be playing so well and for everyone to be firing on all cylinders and they're playing defense consistently and every player seems to know what their role is. It's awesome. And the things that Crean did that drove me absolutely insane, he doesn't seem to be doing anymore. The switching defenses. I swear there was a time where like IU's defense would be on the 4th bounce pass, we're going to switch from 2-3 zone to man-to-man. And then on the 9th chest pass, let's go back to zone. Because you just see guys running around in circles, and I'm watching this like, what are we doing, So that stuff's not happening anymore. The stuff where someone's hitting 4 shots in a row and you sub him out to put in a walk-on, that's not happening anymore. He's not burying his stars on the bench anymore, which, by the way, I feel like this is a game where Yogi's going to have to play. So hopefully he continues with that, and it's not like a thing where, Yogi, let's give you like 8 minutes of rest. Like the dude's in great shape. Just leave him out there. He's the best player. He's the best player to come through IU, and God knows how long. Just leave him out on the court. Honestly, I'm not just saying that to cover my tracks because of how critical I've been of him. It really feels like there was a moment, whether it was in the offseason or whether it was like after the Duke fiasco, whatever it was, where Crean and the coaching staff kind of had like a get together and like, we got to change our approach. We got to change this. Maybe like it feels to me like the coaches had a meeting where they changed kind of how they're approaching it, and like the players did a players only meeting, because the coaches, their approach seems to be completely different than where it was at the beginning of the year, last year, the year before that, the year before that. And then the players kind of had their turmoil, fighting in huddles and all that kind of stuff. And they all seem to be on the same page. They all seem to be hanging out. They, you see pictures on social media at all the locker rooms and all that kind of stuff. So, the trust of the team, the confidence that I don't know if IU's going to win, but I don't have that feeling like this is a disaster waiting to happen like I may have. So it's definitely a good time to be an IU fan for sure.
Yeah, Mark, I got to ask you, being the college basketball expert you are, who do you have winning the tournament that's left? I mean, if you had to pick from the Sweet 16, I'm clearly wrong because I had Michigan State, and I actually had I want to let everybody know I had a bracket. I had one bracket where I picked every game in the first round right except Michigan State. The problem is I had Michigan State winning the whole thing, so it's completely garbage now. Who do you?
So that's.
So who do you have? I mean, what are your? I mean, forget not just the IU game. But what do you think moving forward?
So I had in my bracket, I had Kansas playing Virginia and beating Virginia in the title game, and nothing I've seen is going to change my opinion so far. Certainly, if one of those kids, their chances of winning the title will be hurt significantly. No, but Kansas, I feel like Kansas is the best team. I thought they were the best team coming into the year. They just had so much experience back, and they have so much talent, and their coaches. I feel like the tournament doesn't really start until Kansas loses, if that makes sense. Like all these upsets, all this madness that's going on is kind of cool, but like there's still kind of Kansas hanging over. And it was that way last year with Kentucky too, where it was like, okay, this is cool, all these things are happening, but they're still undefeated Kentucky to worry about. I feel that way about Kansas. They've won like 400 games in a row. It feels like they were in the really tough conference and just breezed through it, won it by 2 games, destroyed everyone in the conference tournament. They're playing well so far in the NCAA tournament, so I like them. And then Virginia is the one team that maybe it's just because I've been blowing the Virginia horn for the last few years. I don't know if it's that or what, but I feel like Virginia's being overlooked. I really like their game. I like their team. I mean, their leadership, their coaching. They don't make mistakes. They certainly have their flaws, but I really like Virginia from IU's half of the bracket. But that's where I see it now. But hopefully I see it differently here in a week or so.
Yeah, before the tournament, I messaged Jared and a few other people and told them the one team I didn't want Indiana to get bracketed up with was Virginia. I didn't want to see Virginia in the second round because that mover blocker offense, that pack line defense, and they don't make mistakes. And it's just they don't play like nobody plays like them. So it's real hard to prepare for on short notice too.
Right, like the closest comparison would be Wisconsin, and we see how IU goes up against Wisconsin, and the past 4 or 5 years the record against Wisconsin has not been great. So Virginia. The way I would describe Virginia to someone who watches Big Ten basketball and only Big Ten basketball is that they're Wisconsin with better players. Basically, they're like Wisconsin with athletes instead of with farmers from La Crosse and Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Like they have 5-star recruits from Atlanta and Chicago and DC. Like that's kind of how they're made up. So just because they play a certain style doesn't mean they're. That's it. Yeah.
So is there any question at all who Indiana fans should be rooting for in the Notre Dame-Wisconsin game that'll tip before Indiana, North Carolina?
No, it's definitely Notre Dame. Like the one thing that would worry me is Notre Dame having beaten them in such. Like if you're a Notre Dame fan in that first matchup, like there's going to be a huge sense of not that every team is obviously every team is trying to win these games, but there's going to be that extra edge for Notre Dame. Like we had these guys, we completely choked it away. We can't let this happen again. This is in-state. We're going to talk. If we beat IU, we're going to talk about this for the rest of our lives. They're going to talk about this in Indiana forever. There's that whole element of it that would worry me about Notre Dame. But as far as like in a vacuum, which team do you not want to play? It's 100% Wisconsin.
Yeah. All right, well, we've come up on about an hour here. This has been awesome. The time has gone by really fast, but this is the point in every show where we give our picks, do our last call, our final statement. So, Mark, I don't know if you want to go on record or not, but this is your opportunity to if you want to. But we'll start with Will. Who you got, Will? IU, North Carolina.
I'm going to stick with the pick that I did the other night and go IU. No reason to go any other way.
Okay. Ryan?
I'm going to get fired if I don't pick Indiana. So,
Speak. Hey,
no,
permission to speak freely.
Honestly, this North Carolina team was struggling at times this year. Really seemed to turn it on in the ACC tournament. Has looked pretty good the first 2 rounds. They struggle with Providence a little bit. I got to go with Indiana though, man. There's just something about this team that every time they're challenged, they figure it out and rise above. I'm not super confident in this pick. I'm not saying definitely Indiana. But I feel like Indiana has something, like this is a special group that is just risen to the occasion every time, whether it's play fast, play slow, make shots, grind it out inside. They sort of rise to the occasion, and like Mark said, for some reason it feels weird all of a sudden because I'm confident, and it hasn't really felt that way in a few years, but I just have this confidence with this team. And I also agree with Mark that Indiana has role players that fit specific roles, that aren't just 5-star recruits who come in and will plug them into this job for a while until they're ready to be the main guy. They've got guys like Colin Hartman and OG and OB who just do everything you want out of a basketball player and help the team win so much. So I love that aspect of this team, and that's why I got to pick them over North Carolina. I think that playing as an underdog, this team plays really well, and I think they can do it again.
Yep. Andy?
I would agree with the previous comments. It is somewhat unsettling at this point after the last few seasons to start to feel confident. But I do think IU has some advantages. If you look again at other teams that North Carolina has struggled with, when Duke and Virginia both beat them, they both shot the three really well. Obviously, that's something IU does, and I think using some of the drive and kick that we talked about, trying to put guys like Kennedy Meeks and Joel James in ball screens who just kind of back off is going to open up some open 3-point shots. So I think I think IU can do enough offensively to be able to outscore at least on a per possession basis what a number of the teams in the ACC have done so far. They've got to find a way to limit North Carolina's 2-point shooting and offensive rebounds inside, and that's certainly going to be a tall task, but it'll be interesting, to see OG, as we talked about before. He's guarding Tyler Ulis and Jamal Murray, one weekend, and then he's going to find himself against Bryce Johnson a lot. I have a feeling in this game. So if he can manage to pull all those off and that versatility that we've seen him show this year, I think they've got a good chance to limit some of those things inside. If Bryant can stay out of foul trouble and keep his emotions in check, then I like their chances to win. So I'll pick IU at this point. This season, I don't know how you pick against these guys, and even if you could, I'm not sure that I want to.
Yeah. Mark, what do you say?
Yeah, so I'm going to do IU fans a favor and pick against IU. I thought IU was going to lose to Kentucky, and we saw how that turned out. So I'm going to stick with the reverse jinx and pick North Carolina. Not because I necessarily don't believe in IU, but I just don't want to get overconfident. I got my walls up for sure. But more seriously, I think the one thing that IU has going for them beyond, like I said earlier, I do think that IU could potentially be the better team. I think we could look back on this game. If IU wins it, we could look back on this game over the summer and say, you know what, that really wasn't that big of an upset. I think IU might have had the better basketball team. North Carolina's probably got the better athletes. Maybe they have the better size and all that kind of stuff. And maybe they have guys who are going to do more in the NBA eventually. Maybe not. I don't know. But IU might have the better team. But then beyond that, the one thing I think IU is working in their favor is North Carolina is not scared of IU at all. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way. They're not. IU is going into this game saying we sort of have to slay a giant here. There are a lot of people picking North Carolina to win it all, and they're going to be the hungry ones. And North Carolina is not saying, okay, what do we need to change about our approach? What do we need to focus on to beat Indiana? They're not saying that at all. They're saying we're North Carolina. We're the best. We're going to do what we do, and you got to beat us. And from that standpoint, I've always felt that way about Roy Williams and his teams. If there is a criticism, I love Roy as a coach. I think he's awesome, and I think he gets a lot of unwarranted crap. But the criticism is that he is stubborn, and that's what he says. He says, like, this is me, this is what our team is, and we're not changing for anybody. So if IU can come in hungry, if they can come in with, like, if Crean and staff can have a specific game plan tailored, maybe something that Carolina hasn't seen before, it wouldn't surprise me. I think it's going to get. I hope the one thing I'm worried about is sort of the start of the biggest and whatever other adjective you want to use, that I could see IU getting overwhelmed early, and it might take them, an under 4 timeout or two to adjust to the size and the pace of the game. So that would worry me a little bit. But, I mean, once they settle down, I think IU is definitely good enough to win. But I'm picking North Carolina just because I picked against IU. I actually was kind of like nervous about the first round game. I watched it with my brother, and we watched Purdue choke away their lead, and then we had this other 5-12 game coming up, and I was like, I don't know, Ryan, this might be happening again. I'm not. Chattanooga's pretty good, and then they won, and he looked at me and he's like, "You're an idiot. We just won by 400. Like, what were you scared of?" So, and then I did that against Kentucky, and IU won. So I'm just gonna stick with being the nervous wreck that I have been every other step of the way, because it seems to be working out well.
Yeah, hey, it's working. Let's keep doing it. So let's go to last call, our final thoughts, and Mark. Yeah, and Mark, we've really enjoyed having you on the show, and in case, and hopefully there are many, many more shows, and we have a couple more weeks worth of shows left. But on the off chance that this is your last appearance on the Assembly Call of this season, what's just kind of your final thought on this team and the whole journey that this team has been on? From kind of a crazy offseason where 3 more guys are kicked off to starting it off so poorly, and now where we are sitting in the Sweet 16 talking about how Indiana may even be better than the number 1 seed they're facing.
For me, this is a turning point in the program, and that sounds like really dramatic. And IU fans are prone to the dramatic. Like, are we back yet? Is it happening yet? But I feel like this is almost a bigger turning point than the 2013 season, where that was kind of the year where everyone said we're back now and we're number 1 and all that kind of stuff. Because, I mean, let's be honest, I was probably leading the charge, but a lot of people, I don't need to spell this out, that the camp was split on the job Tom Crean was doing, whether he should still be coaching, whether these guys were getting the best out of some of the players, whether Yogi, like, I was coming into this season, I said this last time I was on the show, Yogi was kind of in a career. We remember him as like a guy who scored a lot and made some cool plays and was a good player, but, like, it didn't really do much with his career, or you can remember him as an all-time legend and big-time legend path. So a lot of stuff like that in play, where the narrative of Indiana has kind of been turned, and I think this has certainly been my favorite team to watch since the 2002 team, and I truly do mean that. Not just I don't necessarily think this team was better than the 2013 team, but there was so much stuff that was frustrating about that team that was number 1 all year, like, and winning by more, and I was never really satisfied, and I think that's kind of what it means to be a college basketball. That it was the Flames were fanned so badly to start the season. I was throwing up my hands like a year. This is going to be a 10 seed, and we lose in the first round year. For them to be where they were in December, to be where they are now, I'm not sure I'll ever forget this season, no matter what happens on Friday. I'll certainly won't forget if they do win Friday and win again on Sunday. But it's been pretty fun to watch the turnaround, both on an individual level with some of the players and the coaches, and then as a collective whole.
Yeah, I gotta. I was just gonna say I gotta really agree with Mark there. I think that it has been special, and I think we've been kind of trying to point that out the last couple weeks, and it really has been kind of incredible how these guys have done it.
Yeah, it is. It is. Will, last call.
All right, I just want to go on record that counts as Ryan's last call, so we're going to go ahead and go to Andy after me. But I'm going to be brief real quick. I just want to explain a little bit just how much fun I had welcoming the team home on Sunday morning. It was real late, Saturday night, early Sunday morning. A lot of fun. I was really taken away by just how Tom Crean would just not just sign autographs or take pictures with the fans, but he was seriously going up to them. Hey, you want a picture? And like just put his arm around him, like, all right, where's the camera? Like he was genuinely excited, just to interact with the fan base, which I thought was, you don't see that a lot of the coaches, and I think that that's something that we need to just, appreciate from Crean, because he is someone who respects the fan base and really wants to please us and to show us just how good he can make this Indiana team. And I think it's finally coming around where this fan base is starting to support him a little bit more, and I think he deserves it. I'm really excited for Friday. Can't wait to see what everything's going to entail, and I can't wait for that super duper early morning, late night show. It's going to be new territory for us, so I'm going to have some coffee ready in my one hand, and hopefully a celebration, fist pump in the other. But I'm excited to go. And Andy, we're going to swing this over to you because Ryan doesn't get to talk again.
No. Come on. Come on, Ryan. Last call.
I honestly was just going to echo what Mark said. We were having some technical difficulties in the chat for me, but shocking. What else is new? But no, I want to echo what Mark said. I think he was right. I mean, this has been a special run, regardless of what happens on Friday. Obviously, we're sick with wanting to win on Friday, and I think that's a huge deal, and it would be gigantic for the program. But yeah, I believe this is a more significant turnaround than we've seen from the program, and it's also, as we mentioned before, the program is also on solid footing going forward. Because a lot of this is based on youth. And there's a lot of good young players who are still going to be with the team next year, and the recruiting class coming in fills a lot of the holes that will be left behind. And I just feel like this program is headed in the right direction overall, not just this team. And the culture change that's happened this year is sustainable and can move on, because we won't be dumping 4 1,000-point scorers next year. So, yeah, I do think that's different than 2013. And so, yeah, I'm excited for Friday. Who isn't? This is going to be 2 blue blood programs just slugging it out, and hopefully we come out on top.
Yeah. Andy, last call.
All right. Well, I'll give kind of my X factor, I guess, as my last call. OG would certainly be the easy one. I think defensively he certainly will be. And at his current pace, up some of the draft boards and mock drafts you see, he should be passing Ben Simmons sometime on Thursday afternoon. But I think, the big one for me is Troy. We talked about him a little bit earlier. He's been such a, kind of barometer for when this team is playing well and whether he's, good Troy, bad Troy, the whole thing. But, one thing that I saw when I was watching some of North Carolina, he's likely to match up with Justin Jackson when the game gets started, and it seems like opponents really tried to attack him off the dribble with some success. So I think how well Troy does that early in the game, he had that crazy lay-in to start the scoring for IU on Saturday. I think he'll get some chances to take the ball to the basket and really try to attack Jackson in those scenarios early in the game on Friday. And I think if he does well, his confidence starts to balloon, and he can really really lift the team up. If not, we'll kind of see what happens. Other guys have been stepping up, but I think he's the guy I'm most interested to see in this scenario. Did a bit better, settling down. Crean took him out in the second half and settled him down. He came back in and played a bit more under control. Made some nice defensive plays, which is something I don't think any of us would have assumed we'd be talking about heading into a game like this. And so I think how he plays is going to go a long way toward determining the fate of the team. But hopefully another exciting game. I'm sure it will be. And looking forward to another show on Friday that I'll actually be able to be on.
Yeah, it'll be a late one, but it'll be a good one. I didn't offer my official pick there during the picks because I think you all know who I'm picking, and if you're an email subscriber at assemblycall.com/subscribe, then you already know what my official pick is. It's Indiana 74, North Carolina 73. That's the exact same score Indiana won by in 2002. It's, of course, a famous score in Indiana history because it's the score that we won our 1987 national championship by. And I think it makes sense because I think if Indiana can keep this game in the 70s, which means that we're scoring, but it's not crazy up and down, I think that bodes well for Indiana. I think if the game gets into the 80s and North Carolina gets into the 80s, I don't think that'll bode as well. So I think a score right around there will be good. I think it will be a close game. And I believe in this team's toughness, both physically and mentally. And with what we have seen from this team since December, and especially last weekend, I don't know how you can't believe in this team. And I hadn't thought about it from the perspective that Mark said that, hey, we may a couple months from now look back on this and say, yeah, that Indiana team was just better than North Carolina. And I think that's the big lesson to take away from this, if you didn't already learn it from history, is that, yes, Indiana may be a 5 and North Carolina may be a 1, but these are two even teams that are stepping out on the court. And to me, when that's the case, I want the team that has the togetherness, that has that belief, that has the mental and physical toughness. And sometimes teams just gel together and have that have that chemistry that you can't really define, that special thing. And this Indiana team seems to have that. And that's why we're really reaching special territory with this team, where I feel like we're all going to be watching this game. Obviously, we want Indiana to go to the Elite Eight and keep winning and go toward another banner and do all of this stuff. But I feel like for most of us that have been invested with this team and watched every game, all we really want is 40 more minutes with this team. We don't want this to be our last 40 minutes with this team. And that's when you know you have a special group, when it's not just about the wins. It's just about spending those 40 minutes watching them play basketball, because they have a joy about themselves and an enthusiasm, and you feel it as a fan. And that's how I feel. That's how I felt about the 2012 team, the 2011-12 team when we lost to Kentucky. The 2013 team didn't quite have that because that season just wasn't the same, but I thought that 2002 team had it. And that's what this team has. Just give me 40 more minutes. That's all I want with this team. And that's, more than getting to the Elite Eight, more than anything else. I want to win this game Friday night so that on Sunday we get 40 more minutes. And I want to win that one just so we have 40 more minutes, because I love watching this team play, and I think they've got a lot of basketball ahead of them. And, of course, as long as they're playing, we'll keep bringing post-game shows. And if they make it past this weekend, we'll have another special edition for you next week, because that's what we do here on the Assembly Call. So thank you all very much for listening, for supporting us all season long. Mark, thank you very much for being here. Our guest, Mark Titus. Of course, you can follow him at Club Trillion on Twitter. And with that said, everybody, have a great rest of your week. And we will talk to you Friday night. It'll be late, but we'll be here after IU North Carolina. Talk to you then, everybody.